Okay, good, perfect timing, Mo. Thank you so much. Welcome, students, to this student town hall. This is a culmination of 3 days in which I've been speaking with your parents, your teachers and faculty, and now you. I recognize that right now, in the midst of this pandemic, there may be a lot of questions, and the questions may be different for every single group. And so, what we wanted to do is give an opportunity to have your parents ask questions, have your teachers be able to ask questions of me and our team, and last and most importantly, for you to have the opportunity to ask questions in reference to how we're starting the year. I will begin and say that I will do my best to answer as many questions as possible in the time frame we have. If it is a building specific question, a question maybe related to your actual school and the schedule, et cetera, I'm going to defer that to our building principals. The principals will be hosting town halls next week, and I invite you to join into those town halls specifically and be able to participate and ask building specific questions and related to your grade level or relating to your schedule, et cetera. So I want to be clear, as I've done the other nights, those questions I will not be answering. The questions I'll be addressing tonight are really about the operations of our school district, our plan for opening, our plan for keeping you, our teachers, and your families safe, testing, et cetera. And so those are the questions that I'm hoping that we will engage with tonight. You will see at the bottom of your link that good. You will see at the bottom of your link in the Zoom page, I should say, a Q&A feature. I'm going to ask you all to hold off until I am done reading my memorandum, because there may be some questions you have that are answered in the memo I'm about to read. After I am done reading the memo, I will ask you all to please go into the Q&A feature and type in your questions. We're going to be together for about an hour and a half, hour and 15 minutes, and I will do my best to answer every question honestly, sincerely, but most importantly, if I don't know an answer, I'm going to tell you that. And I'll tell you what we're working on, how we're working on it, for that matter. This evening, our two assistant superintendents, Dr. Christine Johnson and Dr. Kim Boxenbaum, are joining us. They are not logging in tonight, but they will be taking notes and information for me as we get ready. So I want to begin just by reading a few quick notes, just so we're all on the same page relative to how we're starting the school year and what we are doing in the district. Pursuant to Governor Phil Murphy's Executive Order 175, that has now been rescinded. And so the clear question I've been receiving is there a remote option for students? And the quick answer is there is no district-wide remote option. There will be accommodations made if need be for students who may have IEPs and visual education plans or 504s, but those will be handled on a case-by-case specific basis. So what does that mean for us? That means that students will begin this year in September in person for a full day, 5-day instructional days. All encore and specials will be in person, following your typical normal school class schedule. There will no longer be half-day or abbreviated days. Social emotional learning will be a priority for us, for you, and for your families as you move forward. While in person, students will be working, with their Chromebooks, but it will not be the primary mode of instruction. We are going to do the best we can to try to make your learning experience just like you would have experienced before the pandemic, even in light of the fact that social distancing, mask wearing, all the other components, all the other layers of protection are in place. In addition to that, I also want to share for our students who are athletes. At this time, fall sports have begun, and we are testing student athletes as they begin their season. Mr. Murphy and our COVID response team will continue to monitor safe competition of all our student athletes. Our administrators, your principals and your assistant principals, will stagger meal times when it comes to cafeteria, recess, and physical education. A self-serve buffet and self-serve buffet lines will be the option for students at all grade levels. Meaning you will walk up to your cafeteria line and receive your food if you're receiving lunch, and it will become prepackaged. No longer will we have exposed food that will exist. Recess will also be held in staggering shifts with an effort to promote social distancing and hygiene protocol. Physical education classes will be held in person and will focus on fitness. Teachers will continue to use social distancing protocols as well as limit the sharing of equipment. Classes can be held outdoors, and we are permitting that, weather permitting, as well as recess and lunch. We're going to do the best we can to create as many different spaces as possible to allow for students to be able to engage socially, but participate, in their educational experience. Again, I want to be honest and say I know things are not normal, but we're going to do our best to try to give you some sense of normalcy. And we're asking students and parents to be a part of that process, a part of that partnership as we move forward. In addition to those protocols, there's a few other things I want to share. Pursuant to the CDC, COVID-19 prevention K-12 in schools, a memo that was released on August 5th, all students, staff, and visitors will be required to wear masks as we begin this year. Again, all students, staff, and visitors will be required to wear masks as we begin this year. There'll also be barriers in place, desk shields for students. What I ask everyone, parents, you alike, to think about when it comes to starting our school year is that we are going to do everything we can to create layers of protection, right? Vaccines is a layer. Mask wearing is a layer. Social distancing of 3 to 6 feet is a layer. The ability to wash your hands, hand sanitizer stations is a layer. I would be lying to you if I didn't say that I am sure there are going to be instances that we will have to deal with. But in those moments, we will do our best to make sure we mitigate them and that we have done everything we can to ensure your safety and that of your teachers as we move forward. With regard to social distancing, the constraints of any given classroom will be determined whether or not the recommended 6 or 3 feet can be achieved. We will do our best to keep students separate as possible, depending on the classroom. In addition to that, it's clear, I want to be clear that vaccinated individuals who test positive for COVID-19 will be treated as unvaccinated individuals as we follow the state's guidance. In addition to that, over the course of the next few weeks, you all will see our quarantine protocols as we move forward and explain to you the what ifs, then what, if indeed there are exposures in schools. But with that said, full contact tracing investigations will take place if we need to investigate contact tracing within a few hours, or it can take up to a few days, depending on how many people might be connected to it. But I want to be clear, direct contacts, individuals who either have been diagnosed with COVID and have notified us, or individuals who come in contact with someone who is COVID positive, or even have been exposed to COVID, will be notified immediately. At the conclusion of our investigation, once a week, we will send a memorandum to every school community, letting you all know about any specific exposure that has come about and the results of that exposure. We will not say who, we will not say where, but we certainly will provide as much information as possible as we're moving forward. I think that is it at this point in time. So, that's kind of my opening statement, students. And so I'm going to do my best to try to answer your questions. We have 261 students who've joined us. Thank you all so much. And hopefully you're listening with your parents as well. But at this point in time, I invite you to populate questions into the chat. I will go through them all. I will say if a question is repetitive, I will just simply say that this question has been answered, and I'll move on to the next question. So let's begin our evening and get started. So the first question is, will we be eating lunch outdoors or inside? The quick answer to that is both. Weather permitting, we are allowing principals to allow students to eat outdoors. We are working, certainly at the high school, that happens already. We are working with our middle school and elementary school principals to figure out how best to facilitate this. But I support the ability, weather permitting, for students to eat outdoors. There's a question that says, when is orientation? Unfortunately, I don't know what grade level you are, so I can't answer that. But if you log into your school town halls that are next week and the week after, the orientation information will certainly be shared. Continue to go through questions. Great question. A student asked, do we have to get a vaccine to enter school? At this point in time, students are not required to be vaccinated. It is not mandatory, but we are encouraging students to participate if your parents and you feel as though this is something that you are interested in. And so again, vaccines are a layer of protection. They certainly provide some level of protection, relative to COVID exposure. And I would recommend it, but I will not mandate it. Neither at this time are we mandating it. There's a question with regard to where's your locker. If you reach out to your building, your school specifically, they can certainly ask that information for you. Again, I'm seeing a few questions from students in relations to letters relative to your classroom assignments and your teachers. Again, next week, your building principal will answer that specifically. Those assignments and communications are going out, and it would be different for every school. So I would not want to answer for all 8 schools, because we have 8 different principals who have 8 times in which they'll be released. Question about, do we have to be vaccinated to go to school? I've answered that already. Let me just pull up the next question. Give me 1 second. So the question is, when is school opening? The first day of school is September 9th. September 9th and September 10th are the first 2 days of school. I think it's important for us to share that as we all begin our first day of school, first 2 days of school together, I want to be clear with you all that we are not just jumping into school and starting. The first 3 days of school are going to be a little different for our students who've been with us for some time. We're going to focus on reconnecting. We're going to focus on our experience over the last year and a half. And so there will be no typical instruction for those first 2 days. It is really about you and you getting to know your classmates, you getting to know your teachers, and us giving you the opportunity as students to process the last few years that have been probably one of the most difficult years for students in our country. There's a great question someone just asked: can the desk shields prevent people from hearing, as well as kids who have bad hearing or are hard of hearing from being behind a shield? I would even go as far as say even wearing a mask. I know when I wear my mask, at times I have to speak very slowly and very loud to ensure people can hear me. What I would ask students to do is to be honest with your teachers, with your principals for that matter. If you're having a difficult time hearing or communicating with your teachers, to please express that. We are going to support you as best as we can as we move forward. We've answered questions around schedules, and our principals are the best ones to get that. I see scheduled and lockers seem to be the go-to question for a lot of students this year. So I promise you all, if you log into your principal town hall next week, they will be able to answer those questions for you specifically. Unfortunately, I just don't know all the lockers, for all the students in the district. And so I'm just not comfortable answering that. There is a question, will we need to do the daily wellness form? At this point in time, the answer to that is yes. The daily wellness form will be required. There's a question with regard to restrooms. Students will be allowed to use restrooms indoors as they have in the past. We ask students to do what we know you need to do regularly in life, which is be aware of your distance, from other students, making sure once you're done using the restroom that you wash your hand thoroughly, dry them thoroughly, and return back to your class. There's a good question about if I can't breathe with the mask on, am I allowed to pull down my mask? We will have frequent mask breaks for students. If you are a student who feels as though you need a break from wearing your mask, we would ask you to simply reach out to your teacher. Let them know what you're experiencing. They will allow you the opportunity to head to the restroom or take a break when necessary. Again, as indicated, the high school students, juniors and seniors in particularly, will be allowed to go off campus. We are working at this point in time for the underclassmen, including our middle school students, to figure out if indeed there are ways to facilitate you all having lunch outdoors. Stephen has a question. He says, will there be a virtual option for sick students with COVID and other illnesses? So let me answer the latter. If you are sick, case in point, you have the cold or you have any type of illness that is not COVID related, and you decide to not come into school, that will be treated as a normal absence as you would. The governor's executive order requires, though, if you contract COVID and are quarantined or the district required you to quarantine for a COVID exposure, you will receive a virtual instruction for the time period in which you are quarantined for. There's a question with regard to will we be using our lockers or carrying our book bags? It's a great question. We are waiting on guidance from the state to figure out whether or not we can indeed use lockers. I would like you all to be able to get back to your lockers and usage. I can only imagine with carrying those big book bags with the Chromebook, with your books inside, but we are just waiting on guidance. We're hoping by next week from the state to be able to let us know whether or not that will be allowed. Someone asked, can you pack lunch from home? Of course you can. That is absolutely fine. There's a question about our lockers going to be spaced out. Unfortunately, no. We have a specific amount of lockers for all of our students, and unfortunately, we do not have enough to be able to space lockers out. Students will be traveling for our high school and upper middle school students. You will indeed be traveling amongst your classes. And just going through some of these are repetitive. There's a question on where there be a limit for people in the classroom. There will be not. Your classes will be the same sizes that they were prior to the pandemic. Again, layers of protection. We will endeavor to have at least 3 to 6 feet in classes where possible. Students will be required to wear masks. There will be desk shields, hand sanitizer stationed throughout the school, as we move forward. I've answered this one. Okay, thank you. Question about schedules. Questions relative to school attire. We have a dress code policy for our students. I ask our students and their parents just to use good judgment and common sense. I am a firm believer that students' dress should not implicate or impact the way in which you receive instruction. With that said, we're also asking students to be responsible at all grade levels, and so to think about what you're wearing and that impact it may have on your learning environment. There's a question is, will you have a different treatment if you are not vaccinated? At this point in time, students who are unvaccinated or vaccinated will be treated the same. There is no separate accommodation or rule for students who are vaccinated and not vaccinated for that matter. Again, I see a lot of questions about schedule and supply lists and lockers, again, which will be answered next week. No, I did not play in the NBA. Somebody asked that question. I wish. There's a question that says, what actions would the school take if someone was not wearing a mask? I want to be clear that it's our expectation that all students will wear masks during the midst of their school day. But I also acknowledge, students are students, and some folks may try to circumvent that. I ask you, for the safety of other students and for the safety of your teachers, to truly be mindful of that. But if indeed there are students who decide not to wear a mask when asked to and encouraged to, there will initially be a conversation with regard to trying to educate you on the importance of it. Eventually, we could involve your parents into that conversation, and then other progressive discipline measures may take place if students decide not to wear masks. So there's a question, what will be the rules on social activities at school, like attending basketball games or pep rallies? At this point in time, we are encouraging and supporting student events to occur in school. Again, they are not going to be the same or normal for that matter. And so you may attend student events or pep rallies, of course, while wearing masks. There may be some distance in between students, but student trips, basketball games, pep rallies, we are encouraging students to participate. There is a student named Dwayne. Dwayne, welcome to our district. Dwayne says he's new. He's going to the 7th grade. Will someone be able to help him, show him around and where to go? That answer is yes. Dwayne, as I said, those first 2 days of school, the 9th and the 10th, are really to get all students acclimated. Because the truth of the matter is, Dwayne, while you might be new, there are plenty of students who have not been in our buildings for almost a year and a half. And so we all need to get accustomed to our buildings, to where the restrooms are, to where the lunchrooms are, to where the gymnasiums are, for that matter. There's a question that says, my kids are new. I think this is a parent, someone's kind of cheating now, but it's all good. My kids are new to Teaneck and they will need to get their Chromebooks. If so, where? I have a 1st grader and an 8th grader. Thank you. Ms. Morales, thanks for logging on. Mr. Soleil, who's our technology director, is on board. Mo, for those parents who are new, who have not gotten Chromebooks, when will they be able to receive them? What's the protocol for that?
Sure, thank you, Dr. Irving. If any students who are registered in the Teaneck Public Schools need a Chromebook, we have our Chrome Depot schedule posted on the website, and they can stop by at any time during those hours and pick up their Chromebook. Additionally, we'll have a distribution at each building throughout the school year as new students enroll into the school system.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. Appreciate that. There's a question about how snow days will be handled, and we got 254 questions. These are a lot more than the parents had. So I'm going to try my best to get to as many of these as possible. How will snow days be handled? We have 2 snow days built into our calendar. If we need to use them, we will. If we run out of snow days, let's just say, we have 3 days where snow is, we only have 2 days on the books. We will wait for guidance from the state to figure out whether or not you will have to make up that day or add on a day to the schedule, or that day could be done remotely or virtual. Question around traveling. I indicated before, we will be traveling for the grade levels that do. The question is, will children in kindergarten, now even expand that to pre-K, will they be required to wear masks? The answer to that is yes. Again, schedules will be handled by your building principals. Answered the locker question already. Schedules. Got it. There's a great question about if someone in class is diagnosed with COVID-19, are students in the class supposed to quarantine, and so for how long? A quarantine period could last as short, depending on the exposure and depending on your vaccination status, from 5 to 7 days to as long as 14 days. What mitigates that is whether or not you want to be COVID tested in between and your vaccination level. I say that in that manner because it depends on many different circumstances. And so I just want to be clear that a quarantine could last from 5 to 7 days to 14 days ultimately, if indeed there's an exposure in the class. And again, if you are exposed and need to quarantine, you'll be logging into your classes remotely. Someone asked, if you get the vaccine, do you have to wear your mask? The answer to that is yes. There's a question on what changes in the ventilation system in the school have been made. Are we opening windows for good airflow and reduce viral load, if ever? So the first answer to that question is we have gone through a thorough examination of our ventilation system and have reported that to the state of New Jersey, and we are in full compliance with our airflow quality and the level of efficacy for all our ventilation systems in the district. Matter of fact, the high school, we just replaced all the units in the high school. Are we opening windows? We are encouraging teachers to open windows for good airflow, but we also ask everyone to use good judgment. Clearly, if it's 30 degrees outside, we will not be opening windows for that matter. Again, what we're trying to do, students, to create layers of protection, as many different layers as possible. Opening windows is just one component of that. There's a question of whether it be breakfast club and aftercare, and the answer to that is yes. Your principal will be sharing all the information regarding the aftercare program. There may be before, there may be a program before. Mohammed, the answer to that is yes. There may be, before program for students that is an enrichment program, but the aftercare program would specifically be that aftercare. And some of these are repetitive, so I'm going to keep moving. I think I've answered this, but I haven't done it in a while, so I'll just repeat it. The question is, what safety procedures are schools taking to keep students and staff safe? I want to reiterate, the wearing of masks is one. The encouragement of students being vaccinated is another. There'll be desk shields and table shields that students will have. There'll be hand sanitizer stationed throughout the school itself. We have updated our air filtration systems at the high school and validated all our air filtration systems in the other schools for that matter. Windows will be open as well. Someone asked a really great question, and I sometimes I can get too superintendent-ish. And so, someone asked, what is social emotional learning? All social emotional learning is knowledge of self and how you're doing. And so when we say the first 2 days are about social emotional learning or SEL, it's really just about where you are. And as a student, how do you feel about starting the school year? As simple as that. Thank you for asking that question. Question is, will there be busing for kids? Absolutely, for those who qualify. And our mask protocols and social distancing will be required on the buses. Someone asked me, am I related to Kyrie Irving? Again, I wish. Someone asked, will there be full-time schedules when school starts or half days? As we indicated before, full-time. A student asked, what happens if we don't take the vaccine? At this point in time, nothing. We are not mandating the vaccine for students. We encourage students to take the vaccine, but we're not mandating. There's a question about whether or not there'll be office hours for extra help. There'll be office hours for teachers. In addition to that, we're also creating enrichment opportunities for students. I would encourage you all, please, students, log into your principal town hall next week so they can talk about all the different resources that are going to be available for you if indeed you need extra help. And I have a lot here. There's a question that said last year, Wednesday was a virtual day because we would clean the schools. Well, when will cleaning be done this year? Cleaning always and has always taken place during the school day, but we did a deep cleaning on Wednesdays. We will have our cleaning protocol go throughout the day and the evening to ensure that our schools are clean and sanitized and ready for you every single day. Mm. Mr. Person asked a question, is there any possible situation that could cause a school to stop in-person classes? The quick answer to that references a school-wide COVID outbreak or an exposure that is so untangible to handle that we would force a closure. Again, I would not like to see that happen. I would prefer that not to happen, but it is possible and could happen. I think we've answered questions around quarantine already. There's a question about how will desks be modified to accommodate the desk shields? They take up a lot of desk space on small desks. That is correct, but we have purchased different size shields for different size desks. There's a great question about will you be able to communicate with your peers even though you're social distancing? The quick answer to that is yes. And we encourage you to communicate with your peers, but we just ask us to be smart about it and do it safely. And so if you're communicating with someone, make sure you have some space between each other. Make sure you're wearing your mask. Try not to touch or high five each other. Anything, a fist bump or an elbow will be suffice. But we want you all to connect with each other. We need you to. This is a great question. Are we still able to order food for Teaneck High School for lunch? I would ask you all to save that question for Mr. Valdez. And please, whoever asked that question, log in first. Let that be the first question. Your principal really needs to answer that. There's a question around, are we going to be able to work in groups? Group work will be encouraged for our students, but we also acknowledge that they may look different as we move forward. Again, folks, I'm just moving through because a lot of these questions have been answered. There's a question about whether or not you can bring lunch from home to school. The answer to that is yes. He said after school program to be available. For the first 2 days, will you have to bring your laptops? I am going to encourage you all and say no, but there may be a caveat to that if there's an activity that requires that. And again, your building principal will let you know that as they send their return to school memos per school. We indicated there will be after school programs. Answer the question about mask. There's a question about is our temperature going to be taken, I guess, upon entry of school? The answer to that is no, we are not doing temperature checks. Answered that question. I think I indicated earlier, field trips are going to be encouraged, although they may look different. They may be smaller in scope and certainly will require masks while students are on the bus and being transported. There's a question about what is a daily wellness check? When do we take one and where? If you came into school last year, you know that there is a protocol or process we call call treks. Every morning, we're going to ask you students and your parents to have a conversation with each other, to be able to discuss with each other how you're feeling and to answer a questionnaire. If there are any issues, questions, concerns, our health officers will reach out to you to be able to best advise you on how to facilitate your day. Great question. Is there a playbook for parents, students, and guardians to refer to for COVID protocols? There is, and we are updating that playbook. It's a frequently asked questions that we're going to share, and it'll be available for all members of our community within the next week and a week and a half or so. Again, we'll be fully in person. Sorry, I missed you. Great question. What happens if you're not eligible to enter the building after filling out the form? First and foremost, you're going to get a phone call from our health official. They will then determine, if indeed a COVID test may be encouraged, or whether or not a student may just want to take a day to be sick for that day. There's a great question about in gym, will we be permitted to take our mask off if we're outside? The answer to that is yes, but it would depend on your teacher. There's a question about will there be after school clubs? The answer to that is yes. Dr. Irvin can move forward appropriately. There we go. There's a question about will there be random COVID testing provided at schools? There won't be random tests, but we will be providing COVID tests. At a later time, we'll share it with parents and students in reference to the district and how we move forward. Oh man, Mo, we may have to talk about my laptop. My mouse is giving me a hard time moving these questions up. There we go. There's a good question about, can people wear a mask under their nose? The answer to that question is no. Your mask must be fully covered on your face. Do we have recess? The answer to that is yes. Can you wear a mask with the face shield? Absolutely. Let me try to touch screen. Yeah. Answer that one. Okay. Again, we'll be in person full day. What time? Those are questions for the building principal. There's a great question from Vicky. Are we going to be in Google Meetings while in your actual classroom? The quick answer to that is possibly, but not all the time. I mean, we are going to encourage our teachers to make sure that you're engaged, involved in your classroom at all times. But there might be days in which your teachers may ask you all to meet in Google Groups while you're physically in your classroom. There's a question about, can you bring your own personal computer to school? You certainly can, but you may have trouble connecting to our internet because we have a firewall relative to who can access that. And that's why our Chromebooks, which are district Chromebooks, are able to connect. Mo, did I answer that well?
Yeah, yes. Also compatibility issues. The software and all the different subscriptions that we have, we know they work on our devices, and we can also support our own built devices. If you have any issues with your own personal device, we're limited on how much we can support you, knowing that it's a personal device.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. Appreciate it. I tried to do my best. My degree's in education, not in technology. What about gym and math situations in student sweating? So the general question is, in gym, math can be difficult. Will we be allowed to take breaks? We will encourage your gym teachers to be mindful of taking breaks in gym while students are wearing the mask. Field trip question we've answered already. There's a question, I'm headed to middle school. Will I be required to get tested before I enter school? The answer is no, we do not have a requirement at this time. I think we answered the field trip question. There's a question about will COVID tests be administered to teachers and students? Yes, COVID tests will be administered to teachers weekly for those teachers who are not vaccinated. For students, we will make them optional through another vendor to make it available for students. These are great questions, students. Thank you all so much. We've been through roughly about 300 thus far, another 400 to go. How would we practice emergency drills? The same way you practice them before COVID-19. But again, it may just look different relative to mask wearing and other directions you'll receive from your teachers. I think we answered there will be after school activities, pep rallies are encouraged, but again, wearing mask. Zach asked a question, what if you wake up late and the school doors are closed? You will be late and your building principal, will certainly work with you and your administration will work with you to try to just assess, what were the reasons. And we will do our best to ensure that you end up back in your class. Mohammed, are you helping me out?
Yes.
Oh, thank you, man. Appreciate you. I assume you're going through and trying to get the repetitive questions out.
Yep.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Field trip question we've answered. Dress code we've answered. There's a question of, do students, need to be quarantined when a family member tests positive for COVID? But will they be tested? Excuse me one second, folks. I apologize. Someone's calling my home. I just need to. Sorry about that, folks. I think I'm waiting for a delivery from Amazon. So I may have to run again if someone knocks at the door. So I will apologize, but let's continue. The students have to quarantine when a family member tests positive for COVID, but we didn't test positive. Depending on the circumstances, it is possible because that is still treated as a secondary or primary exposure, albeit you may test negative. Now, if you test negative after a certain period of days, you will certainly be allowed back in school. But again, the circumstances are very nuanced. It depends on the circumstances as our COVID response team and our contact tracers begin that protocol. Talked about lockers already. There's a question about will pre-K and kindergarten students be required to wear masks? The answer is yes. For pre-K students, with the exception of lunch, of course, and when they are taking naps. There's a question about what if you forget your mask at home? Will you be allowed in the building? Of course, we will provide you with a backup mask. We have ordered some for every building. But we encourage you all to make sure you bring your mask to school. But if your mask breaks or something happens, we're going to give you a new mask. There's another question with regard to someone joining a little late. Are sports going to follow the normal schedule? The quick answer to that is yes at this point in time. But mask may be required while students are on the sidelines or if they're not physically playing their particular sport. There's a question about uniforms. We don't do uniforms in our district. Some masks will be available. I just want to make a quick announcement. The middle school town halls are on Thursday, August 26th, and the high school town hall has been moved. It's now on the 31st of August. So we made some date changes, and the updates will be on our website and on your school website tomorrow. There will not be temperature checks during the day. Answer the PDP question. Vaccines. The question, I'm gonna try my best to answer it. It says, are the way desks were during hybrid going to remain the same? Oh, I get it. Since more people are coming back to the classroom. So it is possible that the desk may remain the same depending on the space and the size of your classroom, or the desk may be pushed in closer. The CDC allows us to go from 6 feet to 3 feet, when necessary. Great question. Clubs will occur after school and they can take place in person or remotely. You answered field trips. We answered snow day question. Again, for snow days, we have 2 snow days built to the schedule. If we go beyond those 2, it is possible we could be virtual, but we're waiting on the state to allow us to do so. Again, there are some building specific questions. I know folks are saying they logged in late. Again, those questions should be asked to your building principal during the principal town halls for next week. Supply lists, lockers, etc. Getting a lot of repeat questions, so I'm not trying to be rude, but I'm just trying to make sure we hit as many new questions as possible. Mohammed, there's a question of what happens if someone has lost their Chromebook?
That's a great question, Dr. Irving, and it's all specific on how it was lost. The details are actually on the website under the technology department webpage. We have a mobile device handbook, and depending on the scenario and what happened, you have various outcomes that can come from that. I encourage you, if you lost your Chromebook, to communicate that with your school, and then they'll communicate that with the technology department.
Thank you so much, buddy. Mo, one more question. I think I know the answer to it, but someone just asked, are incoming 9th graders switching Chromebooks from middle school?
They are not. This goes the same for 4th graders going into, fourth to 5th grade, as well as 8th to 9th grade. You keep your Chromebooks from school to school. We have a district-wide inventory of all the devices.
Thank you so much. So we're always watching. That's what you're saying?
I suggest you read the mobile device handbook.
There you go. Awesome. Thanks so much, buddy. There's a question about air purifiers. Someone says they are layers of protection. Do we have them in each classroom? No, we do not. There's someone who asked, will there be a virtual option? No, there will not, per the governor of New Jersey's executive order. There's a question with regard to volunteer hours for certain grade levels. I would ask you all to please address that with your building principals. There's a question on, are all teachers vaccinated? The quick answer to that is no, but more than a majority of our teachers are vaccinated. I believe close to 75% of our teachers are vaccinated. Might be off by a number or two, because we're updating those numbers as we speak. Answer that. Mo, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scroll through instead of dismissing, and see if there's anything new. All right.
You got it.
Oh, my touch screen won't let me. I got to do the old school way. There's a question of, can people wear gloves in the building? You certainly can. We will not preclude you from wearing gloves. The question again about the back to school supply list. Again, I would encourage you to log into your principal town hall for next week. Someone asked, how will you practice emergency drills? You will practice them the same way and manner in which you practiced them before COVID-19 began, but you may have masks on, and there may be some distance with students as you're going through your drills. Again, building specific questions, I'm going to reiterate again, should really be sent to your building principals for those town halls. And folks, I'm just going through these questions. I'm just trying to grab anything that has not been asked. There's a question about, what do you do about bullying, or if you're being bullied? I would encourage you first to speak to a trusted teacher that is in your school. And if not that person, your building administrator, and they will work with the anti-bullying specialist to reach out to your parents to do the best we can to investigate the circumstance, and hopefully, put an end to that and put you in a better position to continue to learn. Again, we answered the question, Wednesdays will not be virtual. Someone asked a really good question. Can you define an outbreak? An outbreak is defined as 2 or more cases within the same time frame, within the same date, and in the same proximity. That is a great question. But the circumstances also determine it. To give that caveat, the circumstances have to also determine what an outbreak could be as well. We indicated if the class is quarantined, they will learn remotely for the time frame. Ms. Millen, I think I've answered the question. So I just want to say thank you for cheating and sneaking in. It's all good. We encourage our parents to sit with their students and have conversations even after this town hall. So great questions students have asked today, though. I think we've answered that. Students are not required to have negative COVID tests. It's a really good question. Why can't COVID testing be administered to teachers and students? At this point in time, we are gauging our capacity to be able to administer those tests and to facilitate the results of them. Because ultimately, a human being, has to manage that information, even if it's submitted virtually. The state of New Jersey at this point in time is requiring all state employees to be vaccinated. And if they are not, they must submit a weekly COVID test. And so right now we are following the same protocol that the state of New Jersey has as well. There's a question about how transitions to hallways will look. We'll ask students to transition in the hallways orderly, to be mindful of the distance in between other students, but to make their way from one class to another, from their class to the cafeteria, from the cafeteria to the library, and just being mindful. A lot of what we're talking about, students, is just about us utilizing good judgment. And we know we have awesome students in this district. And so it's a matter of just trusting you to trust your best instincts as you're moving through your day. And again, a lot of these questions have been asked already. So again, I don't want to be rude, but I am just going through them. And or some of these questions are building specific. Again, a quick shout out to your principals and their town halls that they'll have next week and the week after. There's a question about how are students going to eat lunch. Students will be eating lunch, as best as we can with some level of distance, but also they'll be eating lunch in pods. And so you'll be eating lunch with the same group of students daily as we move forward. There's a question. It's an event you need to bring, some kind of food. Will you have to sanitize the food before you, bring it to the students? Sanitizing, the food will not be necessary. 9 times out of 10, either someone will transport it, with some gloves, or the student will come forth and receive whatever you may bring to them on their own. There's a question about what happens if you get detention. I would hope no student listening today is going to get detention at all, because the truth of the matter is you students are perfect. But if indeed you find yourselves unfortunately in detention, there will certainly be a conversation for the circumstances that may have put you there. But most importantly, you may be in detention again, socially distanced, wearing masks with shields. Will you be able to bring a water bottle? The answer to that is yes. We are working with our principals now to ensure that during the water stations, that they are either touchless or contactless, for that matter. Someone's really serious about the detention questions. There were a lot of students asking about that. There's a good question. Should students bring headphones? It is, I would recommend it just as a resource and tool to have in your student's bag in case there's a lecture that they're going to listen to individually. Having or bringing headphones in for your Chromebooks cannot hurt. No, and Ethan, yes, field trips will be encouraged this year. Again, they may look different, but we are encouraging field trips to happen. And we really answered a lot of these questions well. No, are you seeing anything new?
I saw the one question a student asked if they should bring their Chromebook and charger to school. I'm not sure if you answered that, but yes, it is highly recommended that you charge your Chromebook at home every night and you bring it to school with the charger every day. So that way, your Chromebook can last all day.
Thank you so much, buddy. Again, a question around lockers, be able to eat lunch with their students. So I am going to just share some information about the town halls for next week. And if there's any new questions that pop up, I'll do my best to answer them if they have not been asked already. Just to be clear, next week, I believe, yes, next week, Thursday, is going to be a series of town halls, Lowell, Benjamin Franklin, Whittier, and Thomas Jefferson. The week after, the 31st, is going to be Teaneck High School. I know I'm missing one or two schools, but that's because they've just been rescheduled over the course of the last, I think, hour and a half for that matter. And so I would encourage parents and students, if you want to know the town hall, for your school, please go to your school website to be able to be aware of that town hall and when it's happening. Yeah, these questions we're getting that we've answered already. Field trips will be happening. Locker rooms, we're waiting on guidance from the state on that one. We'll be able to eat with other students during lunch, yes, but in a social distance manner. So I'm going to conclude here. Let me say to the students who have joined us, thank you so much for participating. In total, we had a multitude of close to 800 questions tonight. And so I want to thank you all for taking part in it. Thank you for allowing me to take time to be able to answer your questions. I want to be clear. I know that the forthcoming year is opening with a lot of ambiguity and a lot of questions. And we're going to do our best to provide you answers. But we ask you to remain safe, to stay connected with your teachers and your family, so that we can make the best decisions possible to keep your educational experience going. We are not out of the woods yet, but we're getting close. And we got to stay together. We got to stay positive. We got to stay Teaneck strong. So I want to say to our students, thank you all so much for participating. Parents, I would encourage you all after tonight, just take 5 minutes. Let's process this conversation with our students about what they heard, about how they feel about what they've heard, and the perceived impact that this may have on their experience as we enter. With that said, students, thank you all so much. Mohammed, thank you for doing this the last 3 nights. Parent, thank you for logging in. And I can't wait to see you all on the 9th. Take care, folks. Please stay safe.